The idea of miracles pervades our culture, and this is no doubt partially a result of our Christian tradition that has so profoundly influenced Western tradition. By definition, a miracle is an event that apparently contradicts known scientific laws and is hence attributed to some supernatural cause. The four Christian Gospels, that is Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, and by the way, there's a lot of other Gospels, we'll talk about that someday, that have become recognized and accepted within the canonical Christian canon. They're filled with miracle stories. Jesus is born of a virgin. He performs numerous acts of inexplicable healing of the dispossessed. He feeds huge crowds from a token offering of food. He changes water to wine. And most spectacular, he is bodily raised from the dead to a heavenly kingdom when he's crucified by Roman soldiers. The use of miracle stories in the New Testament was clearly an effort by the gospel writers to lend credibility to Jesus and his message. In ancient Jewish history and in the time of Jesus, this was a common technique often utilized by Jewish writers in the oral and written traditions of Hebrew scripture. In numerous places in the Old Testament, we find God performing miracles, including the parting of the Red Sea, the destruction of the Tower of Babel, the plagues on the Egyptian people, the raining of manna from heaven, and the frequent destruction of the enemies of the Jewish people by God's hand. So the question is, did all these miracles really happen? Well, there certainly is no contemporary proof that any of them did. Then again, there isn't disproof. For many, this is simply a matter of faith. In the case of the New Testament miracles of Jesus, I must say I'm a little bit skeptical that all of them happened in the manner described in the Gospels. Here's why. The letters written by Paul in the so-called epistles were written in the 50s. Paul wrote in the 50s. None of the Gospels were written until much later. There's no mention of any miracle in the letters of Paul, not one. So you'd think if there were all these big miracles, Paul might have alluded to them. He didn't. Still, no proof is not disproof. Sadly, some Christian writers contend that if the miracle stories are not true, Christianity has no essential value. There's even a lengthy 2-part book called Evidence That Demands a Verdict. It was given to me by a evangelical Christian who knew I was a UU minister and thought I was going to burn in hell because I didn't accept the miracles. Essentially, this book asks the questions: is the Christian Bible built on solid evidence? Is the Bible a reliable historical record? Can the Bible withstand the onslaught of the most scholarly of critics? The book, the 2-part book, and it's quite long, contends that all the miracles are true, as is every word in the Bible. And therefore, all the messages of Christianity, particularly those espoused by the author, are true. The problem with this approach to Christianity is it misses the point. The loving messages so eloquently preached by the itinerant Jewish rabbi, Jesus, were later folded into mythical stories created to give his message power. And when these stories were written during the century following the life of Jesus, they were written by people who lived in the mindset of the ancient world. Modern factual historical writing had yet to be invented, nor was it even understood as valuable. In our modern world, the notion of miracles continues to fascinate us. This despite our love of the rational and the scientific. Books are written about miracles. There's even a literary series called A Course in Miracles. There's a television program on miracles, and even one called Miracle Pets. A lot of people believe in miracles. I remember years ago traveling on business to Clearwater, Florida. The gentleman I was scheduled to visit was aware that I'm a minister, and he eagerly asked me if I knew about the appearance of the Virgin Mary at an office building in Clearwater. When I told him I was unaware of the situation, he drove me to the spot. There before my eyes was this 3-story office building. It was big. The face of the building was all dark glass, top to bottom and all around. On one side of the building was a faint colored oval outline. With extreme imagination, one could discern a trace outline of a woman with a colored halo. There were no other details such as a face or hands or clothes. As it turns out, when the mysterious colored outline appeared on the glass, it became a mecca for Virgin Mary followers who subsequently purchased the building and set up an outdoor shrine in the parking lot of the building. So, do I think it was a miracle? Well, no, I must confess I saw nothing miraculous about the event, other than the fact an image that probably resulted from the garden sprinkler spraying plant chemicals across the glass of the building resulted in such hysteria and mistaken belief. This stuff goes on all the time. This is the basic problem with miracles. There's so many examples of phony miracle claims that most people toss anything that's claimed to be miraculous into a scrap heap. Belief in miracles is unscientific, superstitious, irrational, or just plain wacky. Or is it? Well, I suppose it depends on one's basic theological perspective. Curiously, a vast majority of the world's population accepts the existence of miracles as a given. In the God religions, that is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, a belief in miracles is central to the theology of these religions. For reasons best only known to God, God does occasionally intervene directly into the world and cause events to happen. God does have the ability to tamper with the general flow of creation, even on a day-to-day basis, it's thought. The basic challenges these religions face with their belief in miracles is, why does God appear to intervene miraculously in some cases, but not in other cases? Why does God do wondrous things for some people and not others? This is really a tough question. Like the Western religions, the Eastern religions, including, among others, the Buddhist and Hindu sects, also believe in miracles. Intervention from a god or gods, or the reincarnation of a holy person or prophet, is most definitely possible and can happen on a frequent basis. Like the Western religions, miraculous interventions are not predictable and do not follow an understandable rhyme nor reason in Hinduism or Buddhism. Similarly, the primal or native religions of Africa, Asia, and the Americas also accept the miraculous, the intervention of a god or a divine force or a spirit in the day-to-day workings of humankind. Does the fact that most of humanity accepts the existence of miraculous events mean that miracles happen? Well, no, I don't think so, but it is a clue that miracles may just be possible because miracle claims have been around since the dawn of civilization. Here again, it depends on one's perspective. One of the best parts of being a Unitarian Universalist minister is I run across people with very diverse theological backgrounds, and most of these folks are quite willing or demanding to share their particular perspective. As a result, I think I understand the theological thoughts and feelings of quite a lot of people. From the humanist, the agnostic, or the atheist perspective, the existence of miracles makes no sense. What appears to be miraculous does, in the final analysis, have a logical, rational, scientific background. For most people who share this perspective in the world, as magnificent and complicated as the universe may appear, it's ultimately explainable in scientific terms. It's also believed that extraordinary, miraculous claims demand extraordinary proof. It's very clear that such a rational approach to miraculous claims make a certain amount of sense. How many extraordinary claims about the miraculous have been debunked and proven to be an ordinary explainable cause? There's a lot of them. Most human beings in the world, however, do believe in a god or gods or supernatural forces that interact with the world and the universe we know. For people who hold this perspective, there's a separation, a distinction between the sacred on the one hand and the profane on the other. A God or God created the universe and our world, and he or she or it exists separately from the creation. This God or gods is always watching us and can choose to miraculously intervene in our lives. From our perspective as the created thing, it is difficult or impossible to understand why this God or gods chooses to intervene in some cases and refuses to intervene in others. This can be a cause for no small amount of dismay, because accepting that a supernatural God has the power to miraculously intervene in our lives, but believing that God chooses not to in some instances, can lead a person to a feeling of sadness and kind of a separation from God. Why does God help some people but not others becomes the question. Some years ago, a Great Neck, New York rabbi named Harold Kirshner found himself asking just such a question. As a liberal, compassionate rabbi, Harold Kirshner was often faced with helping console members of his congregation who were experiencing tragedy in their lives, large and small. He offered his care, his love, and his recommendation for prayer. God will help you, he would say to his congregants. Then one day, his 11-year-old son developed a rare disease that caused his young body to age very quickly and result in his death only a year or two later. Perplexed and deeply saddened, Rabbi Kirshner grew angry with God. How could you do this to my family? Why won't you save my son? After all, I'm a man of God. I'm your servant. I'm a good person, and yet you're taking the life of my son. Very much like the Hebrew story of Job. After years of soul-searching, Rabbi Kirshner came to the conclusion that God was not all-powerful in the sense that he or she or it could not or would not intervene in the universe to save the life of a dying child. When a child suffered, so too did God. When tragedy befell a person, God experienced the same tragedy. When a person cries, so too does God. In Rabbi Kirshner's view, you might say that God lives with you and through you, and so the presence of the miraculous does not exist, or at best, it's rare indeed and happens for reasons we cannot understand. The culmination of Rabbi Kirshner's thoughts were written in his now classic book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People. And that's what he thought and said. Okay, so far we have people who do not believe in a God or gods and therefore don't accept the existence of miracles. We have people who do believe in a God, but separate God from the world. God's over here, the world's over here, the sacred and the profane. And they explain miracles as divine interventions for reasons that cannot be explained. We then have people who believe in God, but think he's part and parcel of creation and not truly all-powerful in the sense that God does not miraculously tamper with creation. In this view, God lives with creation and through it and suffers the joys and sorrows we humans suffer or celebrate. Is this a sum total of the possibilities of the miraculous? No, it isn't. There's yet another, what I consider a fascinating possibility. Consider, if you will, that what some people call God or the sacred or universe or creation, that thing or that force is the same essential thing as the creation, that God exists in all things. In other words, all things are divine. The illusion of separateness from this force, this God, is created by our own human inability to perceive beyond our limited senses and reach an understanding of the true nature of things. Perhaps this God exists as a force beyond what is comprehensible or understandable because of our human limitations, or perhaps because we do not allow ourselves to reach beyond the limits of what we comfortably know and understand. In other words, what I'm suggesting here is that there may be no real distinction between the sacred and the profane. They coexist with each other because they are each other. There's no such thing as the natural and supernatural, because what is called supernatural is really the natural. But because of our limited human understanding and perception, we're unable to discern or perceive this. In this scenario, what generally appears to be miraculous may in fact be an event that links the hidden reality of what is called God to that which we can see and perceive and understand, which is our world. It is as though God and creation are a house, and we humans only ever live in one room of the house. Then something happens, and for the first time we open a door in our room and we see a door in our room and we see another room. What may appear to be miraculous is in fact only another part of the house. We just haven't seen it before. If we do not consider this possibility, and if we only confine ourselves to our room, confidently assuring ourselves that the door in our room leads nowhere, and that all reality exists in our room, we will never explore the rest of the house, and will never have the potential of understanding of the whole creation of that, along with the sacred, that which some call God. In many cases, I believe that what appears to be miraculous actually apparently is. But I just think that in the ultimate scheme of things, there's an explanation of miracles, albeit one that involves a coupling of the sacred, which goes by many names, and a coupling with creation and the divine's mysterious workings in the universe. In the scheme of my life, I have been blessed to have witnessed miracles on many occasions. And when I slow down a bit and spend time just looking at creation and life and love, or staring into the infinite star-filled sky and the darkness of an ocean night, I know I see miracles every day. Sadly, it's our own mind and soul that can blind us to the reality of miracles that surround us each and every day of our lives. If you want to consider just one miracle, consider your own existence. Next time you have a quiet moment, look at yourself in the mirror. How did you come to be? Just the act of looking at yourself in the mirror is part of a process that began with the creation of the universe some 13.5 billion years ago. Every moment since that time, 13.5 billion years ago, has been filled with actions and inactions that set conditions that guaranteed you would be born, and you would be looking in that mirror at that moment in time. Had hydrogen condensed a bit differently 13 billion years ago, there'd be no Milky Way galaxy. Had our star, our sun, collected a bit more hydrogen, it would have been too big and too hot, and Earth could not have formed. Had the composition of Earth's minerals been just a bit different, an oxygen atmosphere and oceans and water, which is the birthplace of life, would not exist. Had a small planet not collided with Earth billions of years ago, we would have no moon. And without our moon, our world could not exist as it does now. Had a massive meteor not slammed into the Earth some 600 million years ago, the huge dinosaurs would still roam the Earth, and mammals would never have had a chance to grow and evolve. And since the dawn of humanity, each war, each prophet, each ruler, each empire, each love, each life, each death has created conditions that enabled you to be born and be the person who you are. How could anyone debate the existence of miracles when you really think about this? The question one might ask is, did this all happen by some kind of a plan? Am I supposed to be here, or is my life just a random chance happening? Now, this too is a tough question. But the more I experience life and people, and the more I perceive about the creation and the divine, the more convinced I become that things are not necessarily that random as we might think. They are part of a plan. There is meaning and purpose beyond it all. As the great German philosopher Schopenhauer thought, it is as though each of us is an instrument in a grand symphony, which creates the music of creation. For reasons I cannot explain, extraordinary things seem to happen. Those things that we call miraculous. Strange and inexplicable healings happen. People escape death under the most incredible of circumstances. People meet and fall in love in ways that seem impossible. Or are they part of a plan? Some people seem to have the ability to understand and even to some degree predict the future or know what is happening in some distant place. People visit new places and have a haunting feeling they've been there before. Others strangely and almost unimaginably seem to be able to talk to people long since dead. People from around the world describe holy people and wondrous places in near-death experiences in almost an identical fashion, despite vast cultural and economic differences in their lives. Of course, not all that is claimed to be miraculous is necessarily true. Reasonable and understandable explanations often provide the real cause for what appears to be miraculous. In other cases, miracle stories are merely hoaxes or claims made by people who are not mentally balanced. But, in truth, all of creation and all of life is a miracle, and the sacred forces, the divine behind the process, has unleashed powers and circumstances that make the miraculous possible. Remember the words of Mark Twain. Truth is stranger than fiction, because at least fiction has to make sense. If you close your heart and your mind to the miraculous, you'll never allow yourself to experience it. That door in the room of your life will remain forever closed, and you will never see or understand what lies in the rest of the house, the rest of this sacred creation. So reach for the miraculous. It surrounds each of us, each moment of each day, all the days of your life. It is, as they say, hiding in plain sight. Peace be with you. Please stand and join